Welcome to Pioneer Mindset, a place where we challenge our mindset and address the discomfort in both business and life by finding clarity resulting in bold conviction. I'm your host, Garrett Ruskamp, fifth generation farmer, husband, and father from rural Nebraska. Whether you're navigating frustration from past decisions or worry about the uncertainty you face today in your business, we're going to learn from our struggles and take on new challenges with a resilient mindset. Join me as I share my journey of struggles I faced in agriculture as a farmer and family man. I'm ready to dive into honest conversations to tackle the mindsets surrounding key issues that rural ag business owners face that will ultimately help you gain control, leading to a profitable and sustainable business. Let's adapt to Pioneer Mindset and get to it. Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of Pioneer Mindset. I want to ask, before we dive into this, how confident are you? What's your confidence like? Are you a very confident person, really kind of outgoing, kind of an extrovert kind of person, like go for the gold, go for it all, don't care what anybody thinks, willing to try new things and just get after it and get the results that you ultimately want, and just have that full faith and confidence in yourself and willing to bet on yourself and yourself only? Are you that kind of person, kind of like top tier confidence level? Or are you the opposite? Are you more of like an introvert that really struggles with confidence, really kind of hides in your own shadow and just willing to just doesn't want to get outside of your comfort zone, just stay exactly where you are, not willing to try new things, really judgmental about whatever people think of you, just not ultimately getting the results that you want. And confidence is just a huge, huge, almost burden on you. Are you kind of way at the bottom of that totem pole? Or are you kind of like most of us, maybe somewhat in the middle, maybe a little bit kind of below the middle, kind of below the average, whatever you want to call that? So for today's episode on Pioneer Mindset, I want to focus on the mindset side of things again, focus on confidence. And I've been kind of thinking about this here lately. And, when it comes to confidence in me, I'm willing to kind of share a little bit about my struggles with confidence. And so I've always kind of said this from the beginning. I've had a couple people say that, hey, you're sharing quite a bit. Why are you so open and willing to be so vulnerable and share so much about your personal situation? And for me, if I can be vulnerable and share about my situation, whatever that is, maybe that's on the business side of things and the struggles that we had. Maybe that's like today's episode, dealing with confidence and self-confidence and self-doubt and some of those different things. If I'm willing to be vulnerable enough to help somebody else that's probably going through something similar, by all means, I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be willing to be vulnerable to some extent, and just so that way, hopefully I can help somebody. That's the whole goal here with Pioneer Mindset, with Pioneer Farmer, is to be able to help farmers, ranchers, just like myself, work through whatever their challenges are. Now, back to the whole, I mentioned before, like, are you a super confident person, like top tier? And I mentioned the word extrovert. All right. Then I also mentioned the word introvert, kind of on that lower tier, just really struggling with confidence. And I use those just because I feel like that's kind of a pretty easy like connotation when it comes to those different types of people. But I also think that's kind of a false sense of reality as well, or maybe like a stereotypical kind of word that we put on there, the extrovert. Just because you're an extrovert doesn't necessarily mean that you're extremely confident. Maybe you're just kind of like a fake it till you make it kind of person, or just even a fake person in general, right? And then same with the introverts, somebody that's really reserved, really kind of an introverted type of person that from the outside looking in, it might be easy to think that they are just such a reserved person that they don't have a lot of confidence. Maybe they deal with a lot of self-doubt, but really introvert and extrovert probably are not the right words to actually describe that. It's just maybe something that comes to mind first. And so like with this being said, I think from the outside looking in, everything is maybe not as good as what it might appear, right? And I say that because appearances are just whatever we want people to see. And so with that, it's pretty easy for us to see somebody that might look like they have it all together, might look like they got all the confidence in the world. And maybe they do, but yet at the end of the day, they're still struggling with their own confidence and their own self-doubt. And it's still kind of a major struggle in their life. And vice versa, like I said, maybe it's somebody that looks like they're struggling, but they're doing just fine. Or maybe they have enough faith where the confidence for them isn't a big deal. Okay. So we're definitely going to dive into that. But before we do that, I think it's important for me to kind of share, like I said, be a little bit vulnerable here and share kind of my issues with confidence and being able to share. And if it helps somebody, that's kind of the big goal here. And so for confidence, for me, for whatever the reason, and this isn't going to be like a therapy session where we're going to dive back into laying on a couch trying to figure out why this has always been a big deal. Because I'm not a psychologist. It's hard for me to sometimes look back as to how we got to where we are today. I may be more of a person that has to analyze where we are today and try to move forward. All right. But as we think back to, for me, confidence, for whatever the reason, has always kind of been somewhat of an issue. I'm kind of the person that always seeks opinions from other people, maybe not necessarily validation, but opinions from other people, trying to help them make my decisions to some extent. And that maybe I just don't have the confidence in my own ability to make the decisions. I do that all the time. That's ultimately why I lean on a lot of advisors and just try to get their opinion, maybe because I don't have the confidence in myself to make my own decisions, right? Or maybe I just don't want to have to take full ownership if something doesn't go right. I mean, I feel like we've all been there, right? And so for confidence in my abilities, always kind of having that fear of failure is a one that we talk about all the time, and kind of that dark looming shadow behind us that we always kind of resonate with, the fear of failure, but also talk about, and also like just wondering, is that truly kind of the big issue there, or is that maybe just something that's kind of a cop out? And I say that because we talk about it all the time. And so sometimes maybe that's not the real issue. Get back to the confidence side of things. Maybe I'm actually concerned about the success that I'll have. Maybe I'm actually afraid of the success that I could have. And I feel like you're like, well, why would you be afraid of success? That's all we all want is success. Well, maybe it's just because we've never been there. We don't know what that looks like. Success is maybe actually uncomfortable to a lot of us. I'd say I kind of struggle with that as well. I'm trying to figure out what that actually looks like. And kind of a side note there, that's always kind of a moving target. And success is one of those things that we feel like we just hopefully will get to one day, or that'll be that arrival syndrome, or like we'll just have it, right? And all of a sudden we'll be happy. And I'm not trying to dive off into that too much, but I feel like when it comes back to the confidence side of things, we're always struggling because we haven't gone there. We haven't been there. We haven't experienced that. And so sometimes we just feel like, well, how can I get that? And so how do I get the confidence to get that? And so confidence for me is, like I said, when I get into hard times, it's like trying to have confidence in myself. I have a lot of self-doubt in a lot of my decisions, right? And the decisions that I make, the actions that I take, wondering, is this going to be right? Am I going in the right direction? Is this the right thing to do? Or should I back out on this? And it ultimately dives back into being a very indecisive person as well. I didn't even kind of think about this ahead of time, but a lot of times when it comes to being a very decisive person, and this would really ultimately kind of go back to being, are you confident? Are you one that can easily decide things and stick with it and have a lot of faith in that decision? Or are you kind of back to, like I said, that bottom tier to where we're just always having self-doubt in our decisions, have a hard time even making decisions, right? So back to the making the decisions side of things, I feel like if you have a hard time making the decisions, that's ultimately where you're probably going to be dealing with a lot of self-doubt and then lack of confidence, lack thereof, right? And so that's truly me and a lot of things that I struggle with. And so I've tried to work through that, and it's a constant work in progress. We talk about personal growth and kind of working on ourselves a lot more. And that's really why I've tried to dive into that as much as I can. And even the decisiveness, trying to work on being a better decisive person, and even trying to instill that into my kids. At bedtime, I ask them a simple question. It's a yes or no question. I'm like, do you want me to cover you up? Yes or no? And I want to answer now. Like, because I don't want to stand here for 5 minutes and wondering, yes, no, I don't know. Ultimately, I'm trying to instill that in them, but then also work on it myself as well. And, yes or no. A lot of the questions that we have to answer, they should be yes or no. And we should be able to say, okay, yes. And then we stick with that decision, and we have confidence in that decision. We have faith in that decision that it'll all work out, right? And so that's where I want to kind of dive back into this as far as the confident side of things, because confidence can literally mean the difference between having what you want and not, right? So what happens when you lack confidence, right? So most time that you are reserved, you don't necessarily shoot for the moon, you don't try new things, you let others decide things for you, like I just mentioned. You end up, to some extent, actually living someone else's life, okay? When you lack the confidence to actually go out and establish the things that you want, know what you want, and actually get after it, right? You might actually end up living somebody else's life. So you're going to stay exactly where you are, and you don't ultimately get what you want. And that is if you even know what you want. Okay, back to being the indecisive person. And this is all very common for a lot of people. I did an episode a while back as far as like, what do you want? And so just the ability to figure out, have the confidence in yourself, betting on yourself, and that I'm going to be able to figure out exactly what I want. And I'm going to lay this out. And then this is what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go get it. Being that decisive person, not sitting back and not letting somebody else decide things for you and living somebody else's life. This is all about living your life to the best of your ability. And we're trying to do the best that we can to create the mindset we need to get to that point. But really what this kind of comes back to is ultimately you're always uncomfortable to the point of no action. And so you're always uncomfortable to the point of no action. We just don't take action because we're so uncomfortable, or maybe we're afraid of being uncomfortable. Maybe you're comfortable so much that you don't take action. And so when it comes to being an indecisive person, a person who lacks confidence, that's ultimately what happens. And I can say this because I've been there. I've been there. You've probably been there to some extent. Maybe you are a really decisive person. And maybe this episode doesn't resonate with you. But at some extent, I feel like we can always take it one step further. We can always go up another notch. We can go up another run, right? And so that's where we can always work on how do we kind of build in this confidence. And truthfully, I've been there in a lot of those things. That's why I can attest to those. And that's why I resonate a lot with this. So that's why we're talking about confidence today. Now, with this talk of all this confidence and all this fun stuff, right? I want to ask the other question now, are confidence and faith the same thing? Like faith in that everything's going to work out, or confidence that everything's going to work out, right? Are they the same thing? Well, I think without faith, it's hard to be confident. And without confidence, it's hard to show that you actually have faith. So those two things, I think they're different. Confidence and faith are different, but they do go hand in hand. And so for me, I do the best that I can to have faith, but when times get tough, when times are really hard, and I don't have a lot of confidence, I'm not a very decisive person. When times do get hard, it is really hard for me to have faith. Those two things have to go hand in hand. And once they do, once you put them together and you can actually have faith and you can be a very confident person, that's when we actually start getting results. That's when we actually start moving the needle and getting the things that we ultimately want once we decide what we want, right? And so I'm going to take this back to the episode that we just did here recently, a guest episode with Coach John Soxie, episode 82. If you have not listened to that one, please, by all means, go back and listen to that one. He's a resiliency coach, so he can speak and test a lot of this more than what I probably can. But just from a firsthand experience, one of the quotes that he mentioned that has stuck with me for a very long time, mentioned on a podcast that I listened to that he was actually a guest on for somebody else, and it stuck with me. Basically, the quote goes like this: life happens for you, not to you. Nice, short, and sweet. Life happens for you, not to you. Remember that. By all means, that's a take home. Just remember that. Because when it comes back to this whole confidence and faith working hand in hand, that's what we have to remember. All right? Life happens for you, not to you. So let's take this for an example. If you decided that you wanted something, or you set your sights on something, and maybe the answer is no. Maybe for me in this case, a really good example, and just like I said, going back to be vulnerable here, if I am trying to bring in new clients to Pioneer Farmer, and I keep hearing the words no, and those words, a word no will kill your confidence really, really fast if you let it. Okay, if you let it, I'll say that much. Kind of going back to this quote of life happens for you, not to you. So without that mindset there, if you hear that word no, it's going to it's going to bang up your confidence level. It's going to bang up your faith even as well that, hey, I'm where I need to be, or I'm doing things I need to be, or I'm pursuing my purpose. It's going to bang that up and it's going to take you down a run. And this is what happens to me a lot of times. Maybe it's not trying to sell a client. Maybe it's not trying to bring somebody on to actually help them, but maybe it's hearing the word no from a bank. Maybe you're really young and you're in the dating relationship. Maybe it's hearing no from somebody that you asked out. Whatever the case is, just hearing that word no can really bang up your confidence level. And I get that. But now this also comes back to, life happens for you, not to you. So if you have the faith that there's a reason that this happened, there's a reason that you heard no, maybe you need to refine some things. Maybe that wasn't the person that you need to work with. Maybe that isn't the person that you need to date. Maybe this isn't the loan that you need to take out. So if life happens for you, not to you, that comes back to, let's not let the word no actually beat up our confidence level. Let's let that build upon us that, hey, this is okay, but we're going to move on. We're going to be resilient. We're going to do hard things, right? And so that's to where I think we really need to acknowledge those things. So how do you build confidence in yourself? You're probably like, well, all right, Garrett, I struggle with confidence. This episode's kind of ringing true for me, right? I'm really resonating with this. How do we build confidence into yourself? How do we get to the point where we are that really confident person that's really decisive and is willing to do things and actually get what they want? What do you do when times actually get tough or really uncomfortable? This is the question that we need to ask ourselves, because usually when our confidence takes a hit, that's when things are uncomfortable, when times are tough, or we're struggling, maybe financially we're struggling, maybe we're struggling with relationships in our life, maybe we're just struggling with maybe some weight or physical health issues or whatever the case is, but we're struggling. That's when our confidence takes a hit. That's when faith is hardest to actually keep, right? Goes back to a phrase that we hear a lot of times, and I go back to, it's actually something my dad says a lot, or he's got really kind of a picture hung up where it says, pray hardest when it's hardest to pray. So have faith when it's hardest to have faith, right? So just like this. So when you're going through hard times, when you're going through uncomfortable times, that's when it's really hard to actually have confidence. These are the times when confidence or the lack thereof really shines through. And so I say the lack thereof because that's usually the case. We don't have the confidence, and so we shy back, or we get really punched in the gut when we don't have that confidence to really keep on pushing through when we are going through hard times, because we will, no matter what. Everybody has to at some point or another. Side comment there, you look at those that feel like they have it all together from the outside looking in. You feel like they don't have many issues, they don't have as big of issues, or maybe they just feel like they're getting by really good. But at the end of the day, everybody has their struggles in one form or another. Everybody's had to go through something. To what extent? Well, that's not exactly our judge, right? Everybody's had to go through something. But those that are going to weather the storm a lot better probably have a better faith, a better confidence level, and are willing to really weather that storm a lot better, a lot easier, right? So how do we do this? What are some different things that we can do? Well, I'm going to kind of say there's a lot of different things that we can really focus on. We can do it like we're doing today. Listen to a podcast, listen to a mindset podcast that can really help us focus on the mindset. Maybe you can establish like even a mantra, or work on your motivation side of things, or affirmations, or even like self-help. I mean, this is an entire industry out there that helps people work through these different things. And those are some different areas that we can focus on. But each of those are kind of a little bit different here. And all the things that you might not necessarily care about or think that you don't need to focus on, or definitely feel uncomfortable talking about. Affirmations, geez, boy, Garrett, I don't have time for that. Self-help, what's that? I just always focus on somebody else. I'm a father, right? Or I'm a mother. I just got to provide for my family and everybody else, and I don't focus on myself. Or mantra, what the hell's a mantra, dude? Like, I've never heard of that. Mindset, mindset's for the weak, right? I focus on physical health, physical strength. Well, these are all things that we need to kind of focus on back when it comes to building in this confidence, right? These are all things that we definitely haven't been taught, trained, or conditioned to focus on as well by being raised from the generation prior. Don't get me wrong, there are tough old boys and girls out there that could walk uphill both ways in a snowstorm to school and back and milk the cows 3 times a day and do all things they needed to do. Got calloused hands, and don't get me wrong, that generation worked hard and made a good living doing so. But at the end of the day, let's face it, did they necessarily have all the areas of their life figured out? Maybe from the outside looking in, it looked like it, but I can guarantee they didn't. Once again, everybody has to go through something, right? And so this is where let's do our best to have a lot of these areas in our life kind of focused or kind of on point, right? And that's where we're talking about the mindset, trying to talk about building in these confidence levels, trying to work on it. What can we actually do? So we can focus on those different things, but let's focus on the mindset that we can have. At the end of the day, we're trying to get the result, right? We talk about confidence. We want to build in confidence. We want to build in faith so that way we can do X, Y, and Z and get the result. That's what we're trying to do. But usually what happens in our mindset that going into this is kind of the typical mindset that we have is, first off, I need motivation, whatever that looks like. I need the motivation to help give me the confidence that I can to take the action I need to get the result that I want. All right. So those are kind of the steps that we feel like we need to take in that order: motivation, confidence, action, result. Got it. Done. Well, how often does that actually work for you? How often does motivation actually kind of the true driver in getting the result that you want? And I also say, how long does that motivation last in the thick of things when things are really hard and not easy and not fun and very uncomfortable? How long does motivation last? Usually that's quickly fading. It's a real big high and then you're done with, and then it's done and gone. And so let's flip this a little bit. All right, let's reverse engineer this a little bit. So if we want to get the result, here's what we need to do. It's really simple. We need to take action. We just need to take action. We want to go run a marathon? Put your damn shoes on, boy. with that action, as we take action over and over and over again, we're going to get a result. We're going to get a result of some sorts. Maybe it's not what we want, but we're going to get a result. And by getting that result, it's going to build confidence back into us to take more action and to keep that loop. All of a sudden we're going, and now we're rolling, we're moving the ball, we're going downhill. Things are getting bigger. We're getting bigger results. We're taking more action. We're getting more confidence, right? And so that's ultimately how we push that ball and start getting it rolling, right? It's not necessarily about, I need the motivation. I'm just not very motivated today. Well, if you want to find motivation, just take freaking action, dude. And so that's why, talking about taking action, this is one of the simple things that we can do to build confidence back in our life is to take action. Now, before we dive into that, because I actually kind of forgot to mention something. I forgot to mention back when I was sharing about my story, sharing about being vulnerable, but we also ask ourselves back to how do we build confidence in yourself? So asking myself, how do I do that? And had a meeting with a mentor the other day, and he was kind of talking about this as well. I was truthfully struggling with confidence because I kept hearing the word no, because I kept hearing things I didn't like, or I was just struggling and just been a hard time. We all go through it, even me. And that's just very common. That's just me being vulnerable once again. So back to this, he's like, well, you need to maybe work on the mantra side or the affirmations and try to build that upon yourself so that way it can help get you through the thick of things when it gets really hard. So I wanted to share, what I have actually in place. And this is me once again, and I keep saying it, but being vulnerable and sharing a lot of the personal things that I have in place to help me get through the hard times. So I've been doing a lot of running lately. And when running is not fun for me. It's not easy. And it's something that I don't necessarily like, but I do like the result. That's what we're talking about today. So I build the confidence in myself by taking action, putting my shoes on, going running, and getting the result, which is that feeling of I did something hard. And I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but I wanted to mention the things that I say, the affirmations that I actually have myself to live in the hard, to live in the now, and to build upon the future. Okay. So I've got a couple different sectors to this, or kind of different segments, but it starts off as this, and this is kind of even part of my morning routine. So what I do is I say, I am a strong, honest family man who's willing to be uncomfortable, adaptive, and progressive. I can and I will. That's just to build upon myself. That's within that statement, the way I kind of developed that statement a couple of years back, and I've said it every day, and I'm not reading this. This is off of memory, so I know this exactly. I repeat this in my head when times get tough, when I'm running, or whatever the case is. If it's just in the morning, I am a strong, honest family man who's willing to be uncomfortable, adaptive, and progressive. Part of those are building upon like my X factor, the things that I know that I'm good at. Part of those is building upon something that I want to become, a strong man and willing to be uncomfortable. All right. Nobody necessarily wants to be uncomfortable, but if you're willing to be uncomfortable, you can do more uncomfortable things. So I say that to kind of build in that affirmation. That's who I want to be as well. All right. The next part here is just to build upon, once again, kind of what I want to be, who I am. So I am focused. I'm qualified to lead. I believe in myself. I am worthy of success. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. When I came up with that one, that come back to, if you remember, sometimes in high school, a lot of people at sports events, you get towards the end and you see that you're going to win, and the other side's chanting it, or maybe you're chanting it because you're winning. Your head is, I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. That's just a good chant that I say into my head. And when I say we, it's not me and my wife. It's everybody. It's, I believe that we will win. This next one here is a phrase that I got from an app called the Bible app, actually. And it's a phrase that I kind of build in that faith and that confidence together. But this one here is, Lord, grant me the bold courage I need to live for such a time as this. You have placed me exactly where I need to be and chosen me for a specific purpose. Free me from fear and guide my decisions. I want to live today as your chosen child. And that one there is to build in that confidence and certainty in myself and that I'm exactly where I need to be. And that, just like before, I mentioned before, life happens for you, not to you. I'm exactly where I need to be. Whatever that is, wherever you're at, you're exactly where you need to be. And God put you on this earth for a reason. All right. And then the very, very last statement here, and because I struggle with confidence, this is how I end everything that I'm talking about here. And all of these affirmations, all of this self-help, all of these mantras, whatever the case is, as I'm focusing on my mindset, but as I struggle to sometimes still have that confidence, this is the very last statement. Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to the confidence and being a decisive person and having the faith, sometimes at the end of the day, we just don't believe, but we want to believe. We want to have that faith. We want to. So, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that as we round this out a little bit. I got a couple more things here, but when it comes to the different affirmations that I have, the different things that I say in my life, not saying this is going to work for you, because at the end of the day, you need to find something that works for you. You need to find something that can be your words and not somebody else's. But maybe there's a part of that you can pick apart and add to your own mantra, add to your own affirmation that you can say every day to build in the confidence in your life and to take action. And that's the last thing here. Let's talk about taking action. I say a couple more things here. Taking action, how do we do that? All right. Well, let's just build upon quick wins. Let's do the hard things. I mentioned before that I've been into running. I did a 5K race, and I talked about that last week's episode about doing the things that others won't. Well, I do hard things so that way I can build upon those wins. Once I do hard things, I can do more hard things. And so let's also focus on core 4 when it comes to taking action. The different areas within core 4. So we got body, being, balance, and business. And I try to focus on that from the top down. I said body first, then being, then balance, and then business from a top down approach. And because when it comes to sometimes taking action, building upon those quick wins, doing the hard things, and certainty and the confidence, that's in the being side of things, right? That's number 2, as I stated that, right? But what about body? Body is one that we can focus on. Body is one that we can, to some extent, have some control over. We can take action. We can build upon quick wins. We can go for a walk. We can lift weights. We can go for a run. Use that to build our confidence back into our day and to start our day, right? So that's why I focus on that from the top down. Body, being. Now I built some wins. I did something hard this morning. Now let's focus on the being and the confidence side of things. Focus on being decisive, right? And then from there, we can go into those other areas of our life with the balance and the business as well. And that leads me to leaning into your X factor. And this could be in each of those different areas. Lean into the things that you're good at. Lean into the things that you know that you've done well in the past, right? And so that X factor, whatever the case is, that might be in the business side of things. Focus on what you're actually really good at and use that to help take action. Use that to help take action. Now, the last thing here is we kind of round this out, and I say this every time, but it's all about acknowledgement, grace, and faith. All right. So pat yourself on the back and acknowledge the things that you have done, the hard things that you did, and when you actually took action. I actually went for the run. I give myself a pat on the back that I did the hard thing. And you use that once again to build confidence in yourself so you can take action. I did this, right? I started the business. I went to the bank. I asked for the loan. I went and I asked out the girl that I was afraid of, and I got the date, or whatever the case is, but I did the hard thing and I took action. Use that to build upon yourself and to create those quick wins and the small wins and get that ball rolling. But at the end of the day, life's going to happen. So we need to give ourselves some grace to some extent, right? Things don't always go the way we want them to. And so we need to, even when we're taking action, if things don't work out quite right, even if it doesn't work out the way we want it to, give yourself a little bit of grace. This is life. We're not in control here, right? And this is another phrase that I heard on a different podcast, but sometimes we have to acknowledge that things are not going to be perfect. And maybe even a third of the time, things are going to go really good. Maybe a third of the time, things are just going to be okay. Maybe we're just getting by or just living, right? And maybe even a third of the time, things are really going to suck. Maybe if you can kind of adjust your expectations to that reality, and that's not saying we need to bring ourselves down and be okay with that, or I should say not okay with that, but adjust your expectations, right? And if we're aware that, hey, a third of the time things are going to be really good, a third of the time things are going to be just okay, and a third of the time things are really going to suck. Well, if I'm in the really suck right now, okay, that's what I'm going through right now. But eventually my things are going to change and I'm going to be going through things are going to be okay again. And then times are going to be like really, really good and really excellent. But we have to know that maybe that's short-lived as well. It's just kind of all about adjusting your expectations there and using that to kind of match the confidence level that you're trying to achieve, right? And then obviously at the end of that, that's faith. Faith has to work itself out. Faith that everything will be okay. Faith that I'm going to have this confidence to take the action I need to get the result. But if it doesn't happen, well, that's all kind of comes back to that life happens for you, not to you. And God put us on this earth for a reason. So at the end of the day, I really do hope this is helpful. I really do hope that maybe you can go back and listen to some things here. Pause it where I talked about some things that really resonated with you. Maybe it's within the affirmations. By the way, if you need help kind of just diving into that, if there's something that you would like help to, maybe if you're like me, to where you just like to lean on somebody else when it comes to the confidence side of things, maybe you just want to talk with somebody that can kind of resonate with you on some of those different levels areas, by all means, reach out, whether that's on Facebook or Instagram, like with a direct message, whether that's just reaching out privately to me, whatever the case is. But we need to build upon these things so we can take action, ultimately get the results that we want. So that's the big thing here when it comes to this episode. And I hope that this is very helpful. I hope there's something that resonated with you and you can take home and actually implement in your life so you can build upon your confidence and take action and get the results that you want. But for now, that's all I got, and we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for tagging along with me today as we sharpened our mindsets. If you've gained insight from today's episode, be sure to take a screenshot to share or send this episode to somebody who might also find value in it. For more, follow me on Instagram @GarrettRuskamp or on Facebook, and join me next time for more conviction through clarity.